Well, hey guys, welcome back. This is Tony from Tony Talks Cards. Thanks for joining. We're talking one card today. This is a card I alluded to in a prior video. It's the oldest baseball card I own. I just picked it up at a Robert Edward auction. As you know, I've been kind of going down a path. You followed my videos of picking up some vintage baseball cards. I've got some more to show over the next, months or so, maybe a couple cards here and there, small ones, but this one I saw at the auction. It just ended, I want to say, 3 weeks ago. I had seen this card or a card from this set before. And what stuck out to me was, well, I can see kind of over my shoulder here, I've got a Cubs pillow behind me in the last video too, the same one. It's a Cubs card from 1935. It's a 1935 Goudey 4-in-1. And let me show you this here. You can see here, picked this up a couple weeks ago. It's SGC. You can see 10 pour, but it's got 4 Cubs players on it. Now, the other Goudeys from, I think, 34, 33, those are pretty darn expensive. I mean, if they're not overly, pristine, sure, you can get them for a little cheaper. But this one I saw and thought, wow, it's 4 Cubs cards on one, Cubs players on one card. Again, the 10 or the pour grade up there made the price a little bit more affordable for me. But my oldest card I own, and it's 4 players on one. And what's cool about this to me when I researched it a bit more, you can see there is Burley Grimes, Chuck Klein, and wow, that is not a good view. There it is. Chuck Klein from the Cubs, Kai Kyler, and then Woody English. The cool thing about this is that 3 of these 4 are Hall of Famers. 3 of these 4 are Cubs Hall of Famers. Now, they played for other teams, I think, if not all of them, many of them, but happened to be in 1935 for this 4-in-1 set. They were Cubs players at the same time, or at least for purpose of this card, and have 3 Hall of Famers on one card. I thought, well, that's, you know what? I've never seen this before, and I like the Cubs. I'm trying to get more into and research and learn more about the history of baseball, more than just the years that I collected in like the 80s and 90s, and thought, look at this. I'll check it out, and was lucky enough to pick it up there. So one thing I thought I'd do is kind of go over a little bit of research I did on these 4 players. Now, a lot of you on this channel probably will know this like the back of your hand. It's other stuff I'm missing, probably not bringing up other cool accomplishments they have. But thought as I'm trying to learn more about baseball, I enjoy history and research and things older than I am, and never saw these guys play. Obviously, there's probably not a lot of video footage of them playing, but to have 3 Cubs Hall of Famers on one card from 90 years ago, yeah, for the price, it sounded pretty good. I'll pick it up and, do a little history deep dive for my own purposes and expand my knowledge of baseball in the 30s and 20s. So I got a couple things I wrote down here I want to kind of walk through just as I share my interest in the hobby and what I found about the players. So Burley Grimes first played from 1936 to 1934. He played with the Cubs in 32 and 33 and played for 7 teams. So he actually had, according to my my limited research, Burley Grimes had 270 wins. So that's him in the top corner over there with the cool Chicago script on his jersey. He was elected to the 19 not elected to the Hall of Fame in 1964. And I'm looking at notes I took, so I apologize. I'm looking over there. Some notes I wrote down so I didn't forget about what I wanted to say here. So at retirement, he was the last player, Burley Grimes was, to legally be able to throw a spitball. If it's on the internet, it must be true. I'm assuming it's true, but pretty cool if that was true there for Grimes. He won Game 7 of the 1931 World Series. Again, talked about his 270 wins. And in 1932, he was traded to the Cubs. He was on other teams before that. He was traded to the Cubs in 32 for Hack Wilson, another Cubs Hall of Famer, who also, I think, in 1930 had that year where he had 190 RBI, which I think is still a record today. So, again, Hall of Fame 1964, and he's in the top left corner there. So Chuck Klein, moving, I guess, left to right, played from 1928 to 1944. He played with the Cubs from 34 to 36, and he was the National League MVP in 1932. He had 300 home runs, elected to the Hall of Fame in 1980, so a little bit after his friend over there on the same card. And he was, yeah, from 1929 to 1929 actually. That year he had 43 home runs and 145 RBI. So a big year for him there. Kai Kyler, I'll put that in the bottom left right there, played for the Cubs from 1928 to 1935. Overall, he played from 1921 to 1938. Elected to the Hall of Fame in 1968, so a couple years after Grimes, but well before Klein was there. From 1925 to 1930, he had 5 of his 6 years, he had 30 plus stolen bases. So there you go there. In 1934, he was the National League All-Star Game starter at his position. And it looks like in 1930, he had his career high in hits and runs. And RBI, 1930, had a great year for him in 1930 with RBI, I think of 140 some. But in 1930 was the year that Hack Wilson had the 190 or 91 RBI. So a good season, but someone had a little better season in 1930 there. So didn't know much about him, but again, he's the third of the Cubs Hall of Famers on this card. Now, Woody English on the bottom right corner, not a Hall of Famer, but he did play in the 1933 All-Star Game, which is great. I think that's the first formal All-Star game that was held in 1933. He was a third baseman, a reserve third baseman. He played from 1927 to 1938. And actually, he was, I think, the only one of the four who had his majority of his career, I believe. I could be wrong about that. But a good number of his career played with the Cubs from 27 to 36. So about 10 years with the Cubs, 2 years with another team until 1938. And he had over 200 hits in 2 seasons back to back, I believe it was in the 1930s. So not a Hall of Famer, had a couple big 200 plus hit years in the early 30s, an All-Star Game reserve in 1933. And here we are almost 90 years later. He's showing up on a 4-1 card here with a bunch of other Cubs Hall of Famers. Kai Kyler, Woody English, Burley Grimes, and Chuck Klein. And again, in an SGC 10 pour. I looked at the card too, and I don't really see how it's a pour. Again, this is an older slab, so maybe it was cut incorrectly, or it's been something, someone did something to it. But for me, an eye appeal, seeing the red borders there, I mean, they aren't horribly miscut. I don't see a lot of big creases. The back of the card, and I just learned the backs of these cards are kind of puzzle pieces to a bigger picture of other players of the day. This looks like it's I think Detroit Tigers, bottom right corner of the picture there. So kind of cool there. So I didn't know that buying the card. But again, overall, don't see a lot of creases or damage. The corners are, of course, worn for a 90-year-old card, but don't see a lot of damage. So I'm not sure why it got the pour, but again, for four Cubs Hall of Famers on one card for I think a little over $100, 120 maybe, all in I paid for it. Really happy with it. So again, got a cool card, got to learn something about these players I didn't know before, and 3 of the 4 Hall of Famers. So wanted to share that with you all. And again, I'm sure some of you on these channels who watch this and other channels know a lot more about these players than I do. If you have any comments or observations or things I missed that are interesting about these players, or maybe to correct what I said, I'd love to have you leave a comment. Let me know. Always trying to learn more about the people and the players I collect, football or baseball, which makes them more special, I think, learning about what made them who they are, not just the kind of 2D picture on a card. So thanks for watching. Hope you have a great Friday and a great weekend, and I'll talk to you next week. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.